Hey guys, here we go for Chapter 10, Section 2, Managing and Sustaining Forests. As a real quick overview of the section, we're going to look at these basic methods. We need to emphasize the value of forest ecosystem services. This is going to be some of that full cost pricing should come into effect. We need to halt the government subsidies that hasten their destruction. A lot of times the government will subsidize logging roads, making it cheaper for the people to be able to go in and get it. And there's no real reason behind that. It just causes to quicker deforestation. We really need to protect the old growth forests that really harbor so much of our biodiversity. We need to harvest trees no faster than they can actually be replenished. This is dipping into that natural capital, and it's very important. And we need to plant trees to reestablish whatever forest we're actually going after. That's kind of your real quick overview. To manage forests more sustainably, there are some very widely used approaches which are approved, if you will, approaches which are solid and show that we can take wood out and it grow back sustainably, and this is what we're after. Now, the best one is what we refer to as maximum sustainable yield, MSY. Maximal sustainable yield. This is where every forest, when a tree grows, is going to reach a particular size, depending on the area where it is, how much water, the climate, all these things, and the amount of space that it's getting. What we want to do, and when you start growing plants, they grow very quickly for a while, and then they reach pretty much full size. And from once they get full size to be old growth takes a long time. So they kind of grow quickly, and then their growth grows very slowly. And we want to be able to take advantage of that. We want to harvest the maximum amount of trees that will not reduce the future yield, kind of culling of some of them in between. The problem with maximum sustainable yield is it's difficult to pull off because things change. You plant trees and the climate changes a bit, the different things in the forest, how large the forest is. So although that's the best way to go about it, a lot of times it's difficult to really know exactly what my maximum yield is going to be. Should I let the tree go another 3 years? Will we get a lot out of it? There's a certain point we get big growth, and that's when we want to take the trees instead of spending all the resources and time in the tree not actually getting any bigger. It's difficult to do. Another one is just a ecosystem-based management. We want to minimize the harmful harvesting impacts on the environment. We want to make sure we don't take out so many trees that the topsoil washes away, that we leave enough vegetation for the forest to remain, for the biodiversity to remain intact. It's a lot easier to do this to determine, okay, we haven't taken too many trees, then determining did we get the maximum amount of this tree that we could have. And then also just adaptive management. We go in and we harvest forests. We evaluate the results of that harvest style, and then we modify our approach. Just like we looked at before, we can take samplings of trees out. We can do this kind of a strip here and leave forest and a strip here versus completely clear cutting. So in looking at some of these different ways, we may just want to go in and evaluate which ones are working best for that particular area. Now, one of the things is we really need to do is include the ecosystem services of the forest by estimating their economic value. Once again, if we take all the trees down, we lose everything that was there in the forest. That needs to be added into the price of lumber, if you will. We need to identify and protect the very highly diverse forest areas. We need to identify and protect highly diverse forest areas. Some forests harbor a lot of various things. We're getting water from them, the plant life, the animals that are in there for hunting, for recreation, you name it. Some forests are very diverse and some forests not so much. We need to protect the more diverse ones. The more biodiverse an area, the healthier it is. We need to protect those as much as possible. We really need to stop logging in old growth forests. Those trees are not growing much anymore. They're at full size. We need to protect these old growth forests because they add to this diversity. We need to harvest younger trees just after they're reaching maturity. We also really need to stop clear cutting on the steep slopes. When we clear cut a steep slope, that topsoil just gets washed out. Erosion is inevitable. Then we don't have the soil and the forest can't come back. It's very difficult for anything to grow there. We want to reduce road building in forest and rely a lot more on the selective and the strip cutting. If you put in a logging road, we just start taking out the forest. Selective and strip cutting, we're not doing that with logging roads. We're just pulling certain areas out. Once again, it's a little more expensive, but it is much better for the environment. This is part of that full cost pricing. Instead of subsidizing a logging road where the government pays for the road, and then we just take out the entire forest. We want to leave most of the standing dead trees and larger fallen logs for the wildlife, and also allowing for some of the nutrient cycling. When that tree dies, it goes back into nature, back into the forest. We need this. And a lot of times we're clearing all of that out or sometimes burning it off to make it easier to get the growth out. Once again, once we're removing everything, the nutrient cycling, many of those things are not taking place. And we want to put tree plantations on areas where it's been deforested. If we have gone in and clear cut an area, let's turn that into a tree plantation. It's already been cleared out, animals have gone, it's an area of land, and we just need to turn it into a tree plantation. This is an area we know we're just going to grow trees and harvest trees from. Let's take advantage of the land that we already have. We know it's good for growing trees, and if we put them right back, it's a win-win situation. And we want to certify. Now, when it came to us, especially in the United States, trying to improve the management of our forest fires, and right now we hear about forest fires going in Amazon. Currently, right now in California, they've been really bad. California's had some histories, but up in Oregon, it's been very bad right now. Now, one of our better campaigns was the Smokey the Bear campaign. Smokey the Bear would talk about don't throw your cigarettes out, put out your fires, keep the forest safe. And it has prevented many forest fires, billions of dollars in damaged wood, homes, etc. from the Smokey Bear campaign. A downside of it we didn't really see was this idea that it made everybody think that all forest fires were bad, when in case they really aren't. We need some of these prescribed burns. The prescribed burn, that's where forest fires go in, or the people managing that particular park area, and they determine, okay, it's time for a fire. We've got a lot of low-lying growth and we need to burn it off. And one of those surface fires that just burns off the rubble that's built up and the leaf litter. And this removes all the big flammable material and underbrush, keeping us from getting a crown fire. And normally when we read about fires, we're thinking about crown fires, but we might see a little brush fire and go, oh no, it's bad. They're not all bad. Some are desperately needed. And we need to allow fires on public lands to burn down from time to time. We simply don't want to have the structure damaged. The old growth remains protected from a structure fire. So the Smokey the Bear campaign, great ad campaign. It's still going on. Still see ads with Smokey the Bear. But it's funny that we did have an unintended side effect that people began to see all fires as bad, when in reality, some are very needed. Now, we do want to protect structures in these fire-prone areas. We think of California, Oregon right now because they have fires that have been going on this year. Some of this has been done. We need to thin out some of the trees and the vegetation. So when we can start getting closer into a neighborhood, well, that's an area where we do want to do some selective cutting. We don't want to have as many trees there so the fire can't jump from treetop to treetop, and we can make a break if necessary. We definitely want to clear out a lot of that leaf litter around these areas. So you kind of want a border forest protected from the true natural forest, one that's managed a little bit more to cut down on some of the fires. And we also want to eliminate construction with highly flammable construction materials. There are some shingles made of wood. Well, we don't want to use wood shingles in an area that's prone to forest fires. So some of it is just some common sense construction techniques can help as well. Also, with drones, we need to utilize drones more often because we can use infrared to detect where fires are beginning before they can get out of control. A lot easier to stop a fire when it's smaller than once it turns into a full-grown crown forest fire, just burning down everything in its path. One of the things we really desperately need to do is reduce the demand for harvested trees. In the United States alone, it is estimated that about 60% of our wood is wasted. It's not being used well, trimmed out, we're throwing away lots of it, and this is something we really need to look at and to improve our efficiency of the wood that we are taking. When we take a tree down, we need to use every possible bit of it instead of a lot of wood getting wasted. Go by any construction site in America, look in the dumpsters and 2x4s, wood of all kinds being thrown out. But some of that is necessary, it's no good anymore, but there is a lot of waste. Also, a lot of our trees go to making paper. Well, we don't have to use paper. We know from history that papyrus was our first paper in Egypt. Well, it's a reed. We can make paper from things other than wood. There's a very fast-growing plant, knaf. Looks sort of like bamboo from this picture, but it grows really fast and the fibers are great for making paper. However, we're not making large amounts of it here. In Japan, in Asia, a lot of places, they use rice, the leftover rice stalks. You harvest the rice, and then the stalk, they use the stalks to turn into paper. There's a lot of things that we can use. Knaf, the rice straw, there are other bits of dried fiber, as well as hemp, are all very fast-growing plants that aren't going to cut down into our trees that we can make paper out of. So switching just our paper production alone could make a big difference in the United States. And of course, we simply need to cut down on the use of just throwaway paper products. You know, something that's one time, like a receipt, if you will. I get a receipt, and I take the receipt, and I pretty much immediately throw it away. I track all mine on my cell phone. So I go to the store, and they say it's $13.95. I pull out my phone, I do my banking right here, $13.95 at Publix. Save, I don't need the receipt. But right now, I don't even have an option to say I don't want one. It always gets printed out. But coming up with some ways that we can just get rid of this throwaway paper. Some's always going to be there, but what can we minimize? Now, certifying sustainably grown timber, the FSC, the Forest Stewardship Council, does actually provide a seal. They will certify sustainable timber practices. So trees, for instance, for the textbook that we're using, they do not exceed the long-term forest regeneration rates. So we're only using forests that will regenerate, that we're not taking too many trees for this particular textbook. Is one way this textbook is trying to be a part of this system where we're certifying we're getting lumber from sustainable forests. And currently only about 6% of the world's forest area is actually certified. So this is an area that we could have vast improvement. Well, let's look at a case study in Haiti. Now, Haiti, by and large, used to be largely forested, the whole area of Haiti. However, like I've talked about that I experienced in Nepal, so many people, they just went out and they cut down the trees. You needed to build a house, you cut a tree. You needed to build a fire to cook your food with, you cut down a tree. And they have simply cut down their fuel wood just for use and largely to make charcoal. Charcoal for fuel wood, just like we go have a barbecue grill. You light up the charcoal and cook on it. They've cut down most of their forests just to make charcoal for fuel wood, for use themselves and some for export. The picture you can see up here is the line between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. This is just the border between the two countries. forest on one side, deforested on the other, because Haiti did not have a plan for protecting their forests, and they are largely gone. Now, some of our possible solutions of this are they can establish small plantations of fast-growing fuel wood. There are trees and shrubs that grow really fast. Put plantations in that you know you're going to harvest of fast-growing plants. Also, instead of using charcoal for fuel wood, well, solar-powered ovens. Haiti is an area that gets a lot of direct sun, and some solar-powered ovens would take care of the problem almost entirely. Sure, there'd be days and times you couldn't use your solar-powered oven, but it would cut down on the amount of charcoal dramatically. And also, they could make charcoal from some of the leftover sugarcane processing. You process the sugarcane, you still have the fibers left. That can be processed and used, but these are currently things they're not doing that we need to help educate and train how to do some of these to protect some of our world forests. Now, when it comes to reducing tropical deforestation, one of the debt for nature swaps and conservation concessions is to protect forests in return for aid. So, like USA, or I work for global partners overseas, when we do aid for certain areas, we could trade. We will do aid if you demonstrate that you have a protection of a forest area, that you have some kind of plan for reforestation, and then we'll come in with aid. Some sort of tit for tat, if you will. We need to crack down on illegal logging. There's a lot of places people just go in, they pull into a forest, cut down trees, stick them on a truck, and go sell them. It's just national land, it's theoretically protected land, but the trees are just getting cut and taken down completely illegally, and that's something we really need to try and track and just cut down on. Poaching, if you will, but poaching plants, trees instead of animals. We've already mentioned it before, but the subsidies on logging roads. Many times the government is simply subsidizing the road. The government's paying for the road. Your and our tax dollars are paying for a road to go in so companies can log. It's not connecting us from here to there. It's not a highway going into another city. It's designed specifically to go into a logging area. The logging companies should pay for the road. The government and your and our taxes shouldn't really be going to pay for a logging, once again, full cost pricing. If it costs more for the wood, we're less likely to waste it as much. We want to purchase only sustainable produced woods, just getting to that certification, that we could have a company and we only use certified wood. And people a lot of times will pay knowing that we're getting it from a sustained site. It's got to start somewhere. And let's start planting some forest on the degraded land. There are areas that we've gone in and we've clear cut and done it already. Well, let's turn it into some forest land. Let's go back and make some of it tree plantation. We know we're going to harvest here or begin doing some replanting. Either way, we've got to do something to improve where we're at. So when it comes to sustaining some of these tropical forests, well, we've got some preventative and some restoration. My mom and dad were famous for saying, it's not their phrase, they just reused it, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And oh my goodness, with forest is that true. If we can do something that prevents it from occurring, it's a lot cheaper than trying to fix it after it's already broken. So some of the things in the way of prevention. We need to protect, straight off the bat, some of our most diverse and endangered areas. Some of those we can identify. We know this is a very diverse, biologically diverse area. Its biodiversity is off the chart, needs to be protected. We want to educate settlers, anybody going into these areas, about sustainable agriculture and forestry. Some of the areas people move into parts of the rainforest, they clear it down to grow crops for themselves. This may be indigenous peoples, but they can't grow crops very long, so the soil gets depleted, and they go to another area. If we work to help them do sustainable agriculture in just one place, then we don't just keep cutting down more forests, and depleting more land. So education goes a long way. Subsidize only sustainable forests. If we are going to subsidize, then let's make sure we're only subsidizing areas with our tax dollars that are going to be sustainable, that it's not going to ruin it for future generations. We have to protect that natural capital. We want to protect forests through debt for nature swaps. Once again, this thing, hey, we'll give you aid if you show us that you're doing protection of the forest, and if you have a good forest plan for not deforesting, we'll come in with some aid. You're cutting the trees down to sell them for money for your village, we can trade you some aid. We can come in with something if you protect the forest. Protecting that natural capital. Certify sustainable grown lumber, period. So let's get it certified so we know what we're buying. And reduce poverty. The more we can reduce poverty and we can slow the population growth, taking developing or less developed countries into more developed, it slows this process down tremendously. Affluence has its own problems, but so does poverty, and we need to work out both of those. Now, when it comes to restoration, it's already been done. But we've got to encourage regrowth. A lot of times, if we let it be, secondary growth will come back in. So we've got to, once again, educate, and the area can be brought back. It might take 20, 30 years, but it will occur. We can rehabilitate degraded lands. We may go in with some manure, some fertilizers, get some of those nutrients back in the area. But once again, it can be done. And we need to concentrate our farming and ranching in already cleared areas. We already have areas that are cleared out. That's where our farming and ranching needs to be, not taking on and out more forest areas. These are very important steps that we have to do, which also brings us to our end of forestry. Come back next time and we'll look at managing and sustaining our grasslands. Long live the buffalo, right?